Dušan Vlahović, the big name of this transfer window, it felt like all across Europe, the one who everyone was talking about, certainly in England, because Arsenal were interested and Tottenham were interested, and we think Man City have been interested before now as well, not particularly in this window. Dušan Vlahović ends up suddenly going to Juventus, who've been pretending they weren't going to act this January all along. And that's not even the end of it, because after Dušan Vlahović, we've also seen Denis Zakaria come in. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm not pronouncing his name correctly, but Zakaria coming in as well. There's talk still of yet more possible deals to be done in the next few days, but those are the big incomings. And then outgoing at the same time, Dejan Kulusevski off to Tottenham, along with Rodrigo Bentancur. And word as we're recording this is that Aaron Ramsey is also sat waiting. I saw an extraordinary claim on by a very serious journalist, I believe the journalist on Twitter, saying that he's literally sat like in an airport with a private jet waiting to take him to one of 3 different destinations. But by the time you're listening, you might know which one. So, Mina, all of that's gone down. I think like the biggest story here, though, still has to be Dušan Vlahović, no?
Dušan Vlahović, yes. I think it's an interesting thing that happened, because here's the thing. I think a lot of people were worried about the way that things were going at director level for Juventus last season. There were a lot of bad deals that we obviously spoke about. Rabiot, have we really seen enough from him to command the salary that he commands? Aaron Ramsey has been in and out with injuries and never really a player that has ever been depended on. Arthur came in that swap deal with Pjanic, but again, injury prone, and lots of questions over the way that Juventus was being run. And we've talked about this a lot, and Nicky always used to say, when Mbappe Marotta left, it was like the adult left the table, And it was a bit like, dream big, let's go for Ronaldo, let's go for these guys that arrive for free, but give them huge salaries, which means they'll never leave and no one will match it. And there were just question marks, the way that Nedved and Paratici behaved in certain matches, the way that their reactions were, how they dealt with authority. And then obviously we had Cherubini come in, and he's the new sporting director replacing Fabio Paratici. And we've had Arriva Bene come in. And frankly speaking, I wasn't convinced. I wasn't sure, because I didn't know them. I obviously had a relationship with the prior directors and knew them on a different level. And for me, I know Arriva Bene is someone who's a corporate guy who understands and doesn't have any romance in his life in the terms of the way he looks at football, something I really admire, frankly speaking, because I'm very corporate myself.
Uh-huh.
But
I'm glad you clarified. I thought you were just commenting on his romantic life for a second. But...
No, because he's just not that guy that takes football loyalty seriously. Do you know what I mean? He just knows it's a business. But Cherubini and all his relationships and the ones that he has built, he has really sort of understood, and that has been vital to getting a player like Vlahović. I think Arriva Bene, the way that he has been very firm about payments, calling, for example, Paulo Dybala's bluff, sort of ignoring and answering perfectly when he has been asked about that, saying, well, I wasn't noticing, just completely fobs it off, doesn't try to engage in any drama. The fact that there is Kulusevski, Bentancur, money going out, we're not seeing the benefits of this. So let's see what we can do that is clinical efficiency. We want to see numbers on the pitch. We want to see players who are worth it. So let's go for Vlahović. Now, it's interesting how many of our journalists in Italy, our counterparts, are saying that much of what's happened at Juventus over January, especially Vlahović, is a reaction to Inter trying to go after Dybala, winning the Supercoppa, and sort of just toying with Juventus about, if there's opportunities on the market, then we'll look at those opportunities on the market. And it's Beppe Marotta saying that, right? So it's a little bit like that was the swipe at them that they needed to be like, okay, we're still Juventus. And we can't let Allegri go into a press conference and say, well, we'll keep Milan at 7 points. Like, this is still Juventus. And I feel like that's what they're saying, is that their pride has been activated. And that's why they're so heavy on the market. But frankly, I think that there's a lot there. There's fear of not getting into the top four. So Vlahovic was so important. It was about opportunities, that there is Paratici at Spurs who is willing to pay the money required for Bentancur and Kulusevski so that they can bring in the likes of Denis Zakaria, who they've been following for a while anyway, and actually being followed by a lot of European clubs, and getting in Gatti again. Gatti is a young defender, someone that Cherubini had been following for a while, who is also being followed by several big Italian clubs. I think bringing in those players is vital, because what they're trying to do is mix experience with youngsters and change the way that they're building. There's no more Ronaldos and finished products. Let's try to build a genuine future. And obviously we will add finished products when we have the capability of doing so. But for the moment, let's bet on these wonderful players and see what happens. Whether or not that's enough, and whether or not Allegri is still going to play the world's dullest football, remains to be seen.
Yeah, I think Vlahovic, like, let's name sort of the situation again. I think we covered it a bit on the last episode, but it's still worth reminding ourselves. Juventus had a game against Milan where they got literally no shots on target, something that hadn't happened to Juventus in any game for a couple of years, hadn't happened against Milan a lot longer than that. Like, it's an extraordinary situation to have that game and not produce a single shot on target. So the attack was a big concern, and not just in like a one-off game either, because if you looked at their goal scoring, they're, I think, maybe like 10th or 11th in Serie A in terms of the number of goals they've scored, and that is very much in line with their expected goals. So it's not like it's something that's anomalous. That's how they're performing. You sign a player who is someone who is holds the joint record with Cristiano Ronaldo for most goals in a calendar year. You sign someone who's just celebrated his 22nd birthday, and so has an incredible, certainly, scope for continuing to grow and continuing to get better. I think there's other things that I like about the Vlahovic fit specifically, and I think about the fact that actually, like, he kind of had this real step forward, this explosion, under Prandelli, playing in a team that had a really low centre of gravity. So a team that actually, not saying it played like Juventus, but had some sort of similar conditions to Juventus. Because what Vlahovic isn't, despite his size, is a back-to-goal hold-up striker. He's not. He's a player who wants to turn, who wants to be running forward, who wants to be heading into space. And I think that while it doesn't necessarily mean that you want this to be your ambition as a team to continue playing in this very sort of low tempo, low block way that Allegri has been playing, I think at least it's someone who I think, okay, if that is how things stay, I still think that this footballer can be productive for you. I think he can fit. I think when you see it alongside the signing of Zakaria as well, who I know sort of tends to be a defensive guy, but also really is like a high energy, like can carry the ball box to box guy. I think you start to see some idea of ways that they're trying to build something that actually has some thinking behind it, which I feel like we haven't felt from Juventus in a little while. But the other thing to really sort of hammer home, I think, which I think you alluded to just now, Mina, because at the beginning of this transfer window, I think neither of us thought that this deal would happen for Juventus in this transfer window. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you thought it would. I certainly thought that if Juventus were going to do the Vlahovic deal, it would have to be next summer, because I felt like the money wasn't there. Now, we now know that those sales happen, right? We know that Bentancur and Kulusevski are on the way out, and that's going to generate a lot of cash. But I think even before you look at those sales, I think Juventus took stock of this month and the fact that we're getting towards the end of this month, and they are still not in the top four places. They are still not playing like a team that necessarily belongs in those top four places. And I think there's a real calculation that's happened here that the Champions League is worth, the last few seasons on their balance sheet, it's brought in about 85 million euros worth of prize money. So 85 million worth of prize money is what you're gambling on, and you're spending less than that to sign the player. So you sign the player, you do it now, and you give yourself that impetus. But I do think that this reads like a real statement of intent window from Juventus. And I mean, personally, I think it's probably too late to think that they're going to suddenly make a push for the title. Inter it's not just the gap in points to Inter, it's the fact that Inter are ahead of everyone in terms of how they're playing. But this is a real, no, we're putting pushing all our chips in to make sure we get in the top 4 transfer window for me.
Yeah, and I think that they've brought in directors that are a little bit more careful with the purse strings, let's say, and they, being able to get rid of players and actually making it clear that no one can just sit on the bench. Even when it's come to Ramsey, it's been honestly to the point of threatening with, we're just going to leave you to dry. You have to find a solution because, everyone here needs to start earning everything. But there's also this mental aspect of it all. I think that, for example, Kulusevski is a player that is liked by a lot of people at Juventus on a human level, and obviously as a player, there's a lot of potential there. There's a lot of promise there. And they weren't yet ready to give up on him. Allegri just said, look, I can develop this player in any other year if I have all my, ducks in order and I have that experience and we are sort of coasting. But at the moment, there is just so much that I have to rebuild and re-energize and reorganize. And I don't really have time to dedicate to Kulusevski. And he doesn't, it was very clear after the game against Udinese that he doesn't trust him with his decision-making. It was a very bad performance from Kulusevski in it. And it actually resulted in a lot of trolling by Juventus fans to the player, which wasn't very nice. But this is what happens on social media. And I think that they just took stock of what's going on. It's exactly that. We can't lose out on the Champions League for many reasons, even in terms of prestige. At the end of the day, when it came to a battle for Vlahovic between them and the Premier League sides, he chose Juventus. Juventus has that name and they don't want to lose it. And you would lose it when you're not in the Champions League. Maybe 1 year is fine, but eventually you may not be able to ever attract for a while, not be able to attract the level of players that they are looking to attract at the numbers that they are attracting them. So they also understood that there is room for maneuver in they have 70 million to spend in cash. The rest has to be generated through them and through their sales. And in summer, they feel like, with letting Kulusevski go, with letting Bentancur go, they are sacrifices, but they are ones that need to be made so that they can invest in potential they can actually feel like will bring them the efficiency they require. Also, what I like about the way that this is all done is that they've done so with Allegri on board. I think for a long time, the team, Sarri had a different way of playing football and the team needed to be built for Sarri, but really never was. So you found there was just such a clash in ideologies and what he wanted to do and what the players could actually do. Then you have Pirlo, who was all about, pressing from high and trying to score goals, and it's all fun and fancy-free, but not necessarily rigid on a tactical level or defensively very great. Again, what do we do? But with Allegri, it's okay, if we're going to bring you on board, we promise that we will work with you. And I think that's where also Denis Zakaria, because he is very reluctant, unlike Landucci, to put Arthur and Locatelli together. And he does want somebody who can control the tempo, who is a little bit more defensive-minded if he wants to unleash the others. Because frankly speaking, when you have Locatelli and you're wasting him in the way that you are, it's really horrible to watch because he's capable of so much more. And at least now with McKennie, who he has said, I really would like to keep, that wasn't his feeling in the beginning of the season. Remember that McKennie was not the player that he necessarily wanted to keep. But throughout the season, he has seen a lot in him and he's chosen him rather than Bentancur. And he feels that he can now work with this midfield to perhaps arrange something for everyone to take part in and actually, hold possession in midfield that will bring more goals, that will hopefully keep Dybala further up front rather than back there next to Bonucci trying to take the ball and progress it up, Yeah. It's so annoying to watch Dybala do that. And so it's about how to get the best out of Dybala and Vlahovic. But also, I think Morata, that, there's been a lot of talk of Morata being played in a Mandzukic role, on the wing. Morata doesn't like to be your, number 9. He wants to work with a reference point. He was top assist maker for Ronaldo last season. He likes to work off somebody. He wants to be the man in between the main striker and midfield. He actually loves it, which is why he doesn't like playing with Dybala type of characters, because they lean on him to be the reference point, and he doesn't want to do that, which is what happened in Atletico with João Felix as well. So this works out for me in all of those areas, and you can sort of start seeing that. But again, all falls to what Allegri will choose to do and how long he takes to do that. Because you know what he's like. He needs to find his solidity, and he's not very quick in just experimenting. So how long is this all going to take? Is it? I mean, it's thankful that it's Villarreal that they're taking on and not Liverpool. But Villarreal are also a very annoying team to play. Atalanta can attest to that. But this team needs to start working quickly because there's not that many games left. There obviously are, but Napoli is in great form. They're going to get Anguissa back shortly. They've got Osimhen back, and they're flying. Milan, they're not involved in European competition, obviously, and Atalanta, they have the Europa League, but they're a team that always scare you. So can Juventus make top four, even if they go on a good run?
Yeah, well, I think they can if they go on a good enough run. But I agree with you that it's the great question now is Max Allegri normally works his teams out in mid-season, but normally he's got the pieces from the start of the season to start playing with. And now he's going to get these new pieces and go, right, make it work fast. There's so many things in my head with this transfer. Some things I think are really exciting. I keep sort of thinking about when Chiesa is back, which is going to be a while now, but when you have Chiesa back and you have Vlahovic on the pitch with him, that's such a muscular front line. Like they're both such physical runners, the way they run at you. But you know what I mean, Mina? Like they're not like, these are not shrinking violets. They're both players who like physically impose themselves a bit, I think, with the way they run and the way that they sort of are on the pitch. Obviously, Vlahovic is a bigger player, but even Chiesa, I think he really does have that sort of power is an important part of his game. And I think that is an important part of Ronaldo's game. And I think there's something in the sort of aggression of that this Juventus team has been crying out for at times, because at times they just seemed so horribly passive. I think that's the thing which drives people mad with Allegri's Juventus teams at their worst, is that they can seem like they're just there playing out time. Like they're not taking sort of control of a situation. And I think these are players who, by their nature, seek to do that. I think
do you think they can work well together?
We'll find out. Obviously, in style, I don't see them stepping on each other's toes. You've got one player who likes coming off the wing, one player who is a true centre forward. But look, on the other hand, you could say, well, Vlahovic is the left footer. Is he going to drift into those same spaces that Chiesa wants to exist in? We'll find out. Not for a while, we won't, but eventually we'll find out. I
mean, Chiesa anymore, it doesn't work. So, I mean, I feel like with Chiesa, he needs possession players around him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Vlahovic is very different, yeah. And he is, obviously, he's extraordinary. But my worry is that they need the same type of players around them. And who is going to be the possession player that delivers? Is Dybala staying? Is he going to be at the back somewhere, like trying to get the ball up? Is midfield working? And I feel like when I think of Chiesa, I think of Berardi and senior players who hold the ball so that he can charge forward and do all the things that he does magnificently. I don't necessarily... He is head down, right?
Yeah,
he is so exciting. But I'm worried whether or not there is going to be this overall scheme of play that is elevated, between the final third. Are they going to get it together? Is there going to be a fluid movement and understanding? And is Chiesa going to look up and see where Vlahovic is and deliver, or vice versa? So, and you want them both to shine, but they can't both be head down. So I'm interested to see what will happen and who is going to be the reference point, and in that sense.
Yeah, and it's an interesting question, because I think we very probably have like one Juventus for the next 6 months, right? And then we have a different Juventus next season completely, because the next 6 months, especially with Kulusevski gone now, up front, you have to rely on Vlahovic, yes, but then you have to rely on Dybala and Morata as his supporting acts, right? Because you haven't got Chiesa and you haven't got Kulusevski. So these are the pieces that you've got to make work together. And I think that's an interesting dynamic. We don't know what this... Well, I have a good hunch what this means for the future of Morata, which I don't think Morata will be at Juventus next season. I think he'll be there until next season, but I don't think he's going to get extended now. And Dybala, what does his role become in this? I think I can see a world in which Dybala and Vlahovic work quite well together, because Dybala, as we've talked about, his problem or his asset, depending on how you view it, is that he wants to come back the whole time. Vlahovic isn't interested in that. He wants to get up and take the space at the top of the pitch. All super interesting. I'm interested to see how Zakaria is used, because again, he is sort of perceived as a defensive player, and he does that very effectively. Did it at Mönchengladbach, but I also think he can run box to box. But My suspicion is
you don't need that though.
You actually probably want him to come and hold that middle ground, and actually maybe that frees up Locatelli to run more box to box than he's been doing so far, because that's what he can do as a mezzala.